Thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring today's video. More on them later. Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. Now, throughout the years, we've put a lot of images onto leather using kind of the standard process. That is, tracing something onto wet leather using like a stylus, then going back in with a swivel knife to cut it into place, then using the tools of the trade to kind of bevel them and make some cool shapes into it. Now, this is effective and cool and makes that stereotypical, like, leather look, right? But there are times, fair viewer, where I just want a cool image with like a lot of detail. It doesn't have to have all that depth or have to take a lot of time in tooling. And honestly, sometimes that look just isn't what I'm looking for. I just kind of want a cool image onto my leather. So for today's episode, I thought it'd be fun to go over that, like just different ways to get intricate and cool images onto our leather, like transfers or tattoos. So without much further ado, let's jump right into it and level up this skill. Now, this first one I'm gonna go over is one I've actually done in a prior video, my apron video here, but it's slotted in so nicely that I just wanted to go over it again because I think it works for this particular application. Now, during that video, I had made a full apron that I decided would look more cool if it was like tattooed up. Without it, it just kind of looked basic and plain. And the method I came up with, I was actually really proud of. All I did was use my Cricut cutter to cut out these shapes in some vinyl. Then I just went back in and removed all of the pieces, leaving me with the empty spaces that'll become my tattoos. Now, the big issue with this vinyl method is if you have a lot of like free-floating kind of fiddly pieces, when you go to actually put the vinyl onto something else, you have to reposition them all and it can kind of be wonky. In order to get around this though, all you need to do is use some of this transfer tape. This stuff is just slightly sticky and allows you to lock all of those pieces into place relative to each other. With that secured, I was able to cut out all of my different designs so that I could place them wherever I thought they'd look cool on my apron. Once I had that all figured out, I just removed the paper backing and actually adhered the vinyl directly onto my leather. Then removed that transfer tape. Next, to protect the rest of my project, I just taped some of these pieces of foam board to act like little shields. Then went in with my airbrush with some leather dye to just fill in those designs. After giving the dye just a few minutes to dry, I was able to cleanly remove that vinyl, leaving me with an absolutely perfect design. I remember really winging it with this one, like I made that whole process up wholesale, and I'm still impressed with how good that came out. Even the really small details came out looking perfect. Now, if you don't have an airbrush, I'm pretty sure you could just use like a dauber. Just make sure it doesn't have a lot of dye on it so that it doesn't leach out underneath the vinyl. But if you dip your dauber and then like put it on something else first to get the bulk of it off, you can definitely just kind of touch it into that space, and I think it would do the same thing. Now, the issue I had with that is it's cool, and it definitely looks great, but it's hard to get a good gradient on things. Which again, is all well and good, but if I want to get something that's truly intricate and has a lot of cool shading to it or whatever, I think I'd have to go with a different process. So in researching ways to maybe like transfer an image, I started looking up the thought of like a temporary tattoo of some sort. And I thought it'd be cool if you could make your own at home. Then I found a whole bunch of videos that were just talking about how to use regular old printer paper to make a temporary tattoo. If you search for it here on YouTube, you're basically gonna come up with something where somebody prints an image with like an inkjet printer specifically, and then sprays perfume or body spray onto the image. Next, they soak it in hot water to make the paper more pliable and kind of thin. Then add the same perfume to wherever on their body they want it and then stick the image on. After just a few seconds, you can peel it back off and that ink has transferred onto your skin. I thought that was really cool, and if it could happen on skin, it could happen on leather, because all leather is skin. Which honestly, it's kind of gross when you think of it that way. Yes, I shall wear my skin hat into battle. Protection. Anywho, I decided to give this a go, so I printed out this badass skull image from the internet. This has exactly the kind of detail I'm looking for, with all those little lines and swirls and intricate shading. I thought it just looked really cool. For my leather, I had this nice piece of veg tan that was left over from the stomach portion of my armor build I did for Tandy. You can check that video out right here if you're curious. Now, to start this process, I first just cut out my image so that it was easier to manage. Now, I really didn't want to use like a perfume or a cologne like is shown in a lot of those videos, just because I don't want my little piece of leather to smell like it's taking me out on a cheap date. Like, I don't know. The other warriors tremble on the battlefield when they smell me coming. Is it with fear or excitement? But in thinking about it, the only thing that would really like make the ink become transferable inside of a perfume would be the carrier, which is just an alcohol. So I decided instead of using a perfume or body spray to just use some rubbing alcohol that came in a spray bottle. I just made sure my image was completely saturated. Then I stuck it into a bowl of hot water for 3 minutes to get the paper all loose and ready to go. After my 3 minutes was up, I carefully placed the paper image side down onto my leather and applied a bunch of pressure to try to help transfer that ink. I also added just a bit more of alcohol to the back of the paper to really help that ink decide it wanted to let go of the paper. And upon pulling this off, I really wasn't impressed with the results. There's a ghost of an image there, but really nothing to write home about. Undeterred though, I decided really the only other variable I can see compared to those other videos was the fact that I used a different kind of alcohol, i.e. rubbing alcohol aside from what's in the perfume. Luckily, I just so happen to have a whole ass bottle of this perfumer's alcohol that Maddie had purchased when she wanted to learn how to make her own perfumes. The thought being that if the specific kind of alcohol that's used in perfumes does the trick, this is that alcohol. It should do the thing. So I did the same thing again, soaking the image in the alcohol, as well as the water, and then even added some of that alcohol to the leather before sticking the image onto it. This, for some reason, yielded absolutely no results. Not even a smudge of ink onto the leather. I have no idea why that did nothing. Now, at this point, I was genuinely a bit frustrated because I got excited about this being kind of this cool thing that I was gonna show you, like, oh, look at that, you can do this neat thing with leather and in a printer paper or whatever. It just wasn't going as planned, and it hurt my soul a little bit. I even buckled and decided to try to use some cologne, just to see if for some reason that had some kind of a magic formula to make this thing work. Again though, I got nothing. Though my leather did smell strangely appealing and like it was ready to take me out on an extra special night. Okay, I was about ready to give up on this one, but damn it, I'm stubborn and I really wanted to make it work, so one more attempt. This time, I printed the image onto some glossy paper, thinking that the ink would sit on top of it instead of actually, like, absorbing into the fibers of the paper. I used the perfumer's alcohol on this one again, and also used a little mallet as a roller to really get that image stuck if I could. And huzzah, I did the thing! This time, the image totally transferred over, though it did end up a bit more faint than I wanted to. That said, it totally looks cool and would like 100% fit in as the cover of some arcane book of some sort. Like that kind of faded look, almost looks like it's faded with time. I really genuinely think that looks kind of cool. And I bet if we were to use something like a wax paper instead of a printer paper of some sort, that it would be even easier to transfer over. Or maybe even like the papers they sell specifically to make your own temporary tattoo. That would probably work the best, if I'm being honest. That did make me have an idea though, where I'm trying to do all these things to basically make a temporary tattoo. What if we just used, you know, temporary tattoos? Now I just so happen to have a whole bunch of big old temporary tattoos because like last Halloween's episode, I was supposed to be like, sexy modern day vampire. I was only able to pull off modern day vampire, just minus the sexy. But I did have a lot of tattoos that I didn't get a chance to use. I also ended up getting a whole bunch of like caramel apple and pumpkin in just the worst places you can get it. Just the worst. Maddie's fault entirely. Just entirely. You can check out those friggin' shenanigans here if you're interested. So to try this thing out, I selected this really cool looking snake here, just because it's a very simple design and I thought it would provide like a lot of contrast with the leather. Now I'm pretty sure you know the drill with these things, we've all used them as a kid. You just put them face down on the surface you wish to be tattooed, and then apply a whole bunch of water to the back to soak the paper. Then with just a little bit of pressure to help make sure that tattoo adheres to the surface, bam! Instant tattoo! And honestly, that looks super slick. I love how much stark detail there is in general, and I could see this being a really simple way to put some cool designs onto your leather. In fact, I know there are specific services, I think one's name is Inkbox, where you can like send them a design you want and they'll turn it into one of those transferable tattoos. Just out of curiosity though, I also wanted to see what would happen if we tried to like dye the leather now. My thought here being that because it's almost like a plasticky protective coating that this actually is, I thought that it would leave the leather underneath kind of undyed, so you'd have that cool contrast of color where you've got the lighter leather and then the dye kind of around it, and then of course the black from the tattoo. But I found to my surprise that when I actually added this to the snake, The tattoo itself soaked up a whole bunch of that color. So much so, in fact, that I actually tried to dab some of it away and found that the tattoo immediately came off. What I think happened here is that the alcohol carrier of the dye completely dissolved the tattoo. And I'm gonna be honest, I was really bummed about that because I thought it looked so slick. So in the interest of science though, I decided to see what would happen if we went ahead and dyed the leather first. Now for my tattoo, I chose this cool undead girl that's done in kind of a sketchy style that I really like. Again, I just put it into place, wet the back of it, and then applied pressure to make sure it got stuck. And this thing looks so sick! Again, I really can see this being an interesting way to get pieces of artwork onto your leather. In fact, I liked this one so much that I decided to actually cut and tool that leather to make this kind of cool plaque shape. Look at how good that looks! Like, picture this as a detail maybe on the front of a grimoire of a book of some sort, right? Like, the detail's fantastic and it looks great, and after I've applied a resist to the whole thing, it actually feels like one piece, like it's all locked into place, so I don't think it's gonna rub out. What I would caution against, though, is actually putting it somewhere that will, like, flex too much. It's meant to be on skin, so I think it definitely has some flex to it, like it's not cracking or breaking at all. But I think over time, if you had it to a place that flexed a lot, that image would eventually break. That said, for fairly stationary areas, like again, the cover of a book or something like that, this is awesome. I love this technique. And with those surfaces where you can have your own made, you can have like an old rustic faded map of some sort, or maybe you have a bestiary where it has like some kind of an animal jumping out at you. Limitless, really cool technique. I love that. Okay, so for this next one, I actually wanted to see if it would be possible to tattoo leather, like with a real tattoo gun. And luckily, I was able to get this gun here from Amazon for a really good price. Which is great, because as the last video showed, we had just recently went to a LARP, and guys, we've been bleeding money. Like, aside from making sure we had all of our own kit and stuff to bring along, we also made a whole bunch of quest items and bought some stuff to make sure other people had fun too, since we knew so many of you would be coming with us. But yeah, we spent a lot of money. Luckily, thanks to today's sponsor, Rocket Money, we're able to get ourselves back to, like, financial stability. Rocket Money is an all-in-one finance platform that helps you save more and spend less, which is exactly what I needed to do. Not only that, but it helps you manage your subscriptions so you're not just paying for things you don't use, lower your bills, monitor your credit score, make a savings plan all in one space. And that bit about managing your subscription alone is fantastic. Rocket Money's able to identify recurring charges and cancel all unwanted subscriptions for you. For my personal finances, that alone is a lifesaver, but then for like skill tree finances, it's awesome that it helps me like set a budget for all of the things we spend to make stuff here, as well as just an overall savings plan for our growth in the future. To try it out for free and then eventually unlock more features with premium, just head to rocketmoney.com/skilltree or click the link in the description below. All right, so as I said, we're gonna try to actually tattoo some leather, which honestly, I've been wanting to try to do for years now. Now, the pack I got from Amazon actually came with a lot of really cool stuff, but the main body of this bad boy is this tattoo gun here. It also came with a whole bunch of different needle cartridges, some with a single needle in them for doing like fine line work, I imagine, and outlining things, and others with multiple needles, more for filling in larger areas and doing shading. Again, I imagine. A tattoo artist? I am not. Though I am the owner of multiple tattoos, so I think that's how it works. And the operation is actually really simple. To install the cartridges, you just kind of press them and twist them into the tip of the gun to lock them into place. This little foot pedal here is what turns the gun on as you work. Finally, there's a controller that they both plug into that you can use to set the speed of the needle. I also picked up some of this nice black ink. The set came with a whole bunch of different colored inks, but I picked up this one because it was supposed to be like a better quality ink. Finally, the pack came with a whole bunch of these little ink wells. All I had to do was fill up one of those wells with my ink and dip the tip of the tattoo gun into that ink. The ink fills up the needle cartridge and it's ready to go. Now, when you get a tattoo, you usually get like a like transfer paper of some sort so that at least the outline of the image gets onto your skin first. This gives the artist the outline to follow and just make sure everything falls into place where it should on your body. Now, if we wanted to do this on leather, we could either use like maybe some carbon paper to trace our image onto, Or, as we learned earlier, some printer paper and some alcohol. Luckily, I just so happen to have some leather with a lightly transferred image on it from my attempts earlier on. And I figure, why waste the leather? It's already there. That should be enough for me to work with. Ah, love it when a plan comes together. Or at least when I accidentally stumble into the right kind of solution. That works too. I'll take what I can get. Getting into this, I was shocked at just how intuitive this felt. There's definitely an issue with the leather where you don't want to be too close to it because it makes the needle almost hop off of the leather because the needle's trying to push in too deeply. But once you get the gist of how far away to keep it, it almost feels just like you're drawing. It's not that different. Though I did also notice that little sprinkles of ink, especially when you first dip the needle in the well, can get on the leather. I think if that happens on regular human skin when you're tattooing, you can just kind of wipe it away. But on your leather, it will dye those areas and make it look a little bit more messy. Not that big of an issue, but just be aware. Still though, using that single needle cartridge, I was able to outline the skull and kind of get all that detail around the swirls on the sides. And I'm not gonna lie, this was actually a lot of fun. I think tattooing leather is a thing I might actually just kind of get into. I really enjoyed doing this. I felt like I had a lot of freedom to just do kind of interesting things I'd normally do by just drawing. And I especially like going back in with the multi-needle cartridge to just fill in those larger areas and start doing some of my shading. And look at how dope that is! For my first time actually tattooing a thing, I'm pretty damn proud of that. Sure, no human being should ever trust me to tattoo them, but for a leather project, again for the front of a book, or even on just your armor, because this one can flex, that's dope. In fact, could you imagine some Death Knight coming out onto the field and he has all these arcane symbols tattooed on them and maybe a death counter roughly drawn in of the people they've taken down in battle? That would look great, and this is so much fun to do. So what do you think? Do you find any of these methods interesting, or are you a purist who only thinks tooling leather is the way to go? If you are interested in this and can think of any other ways to kind of make it happen, why don't you leave that in the comment section below? I'd love to see what you come up with. Now, I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, why don't you give me some of that like it love, and don't forget to subscribe so you know when I release new content. In the meantime, though, keep leveling up, you. You've made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that. It is a fantastic way to support this channel. Another fantastic way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and they are the reason we're able to do any of this. Let me just take a moment to welcome our newest high tier level Patreon member, Ken. Short and sweet. Hi, Ken. Thank you so much for your support. It honestly means the world to us, and we just couldn't do this without you guys. If you like what we do here and want to support, why don't you consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you can click on one of these videos here, and YouTube likes that too. I'm gonna go ahead and look for more things to tattoo. That's a lot of fun. Hey, Maddie, do you trust me?